Hello and welcome to Write It Up, a podcast all about the ins, outs, and in-betweens of self-publishing. This is episode 2, self-publishing, what you need to know and be prepared for before you begin. I am P.E. Craven, or you can just call me Paige. I'm the author of the Realm Leaper series and your host. Welcome to the show. Okay, so before we begin, just a really quick update on some life stuff. I mentioned before in the last episode that I am now full-time writing. I'm at home, working from home, doing a lot of projects. This is one of them. And it's been a really great transition. I have a bunch of events that are coming up this Saturday, so August 17th. I am going to be at the Black Hearts Masquerade and book signing in Nashville. So I'll be at that book signing. I believe there are still tickets available. So if you're interested in that, if you're close to Nashville, come say hi to me. That would be awesome. And then on September 7th, I will be a member of the Chattanooga Public Library Authors Convention. So they're doing a book signing and some panels for writers and authors. So it'll be a big event that whole day, which I'm really excited for. This will be my first local event. So I'm kind of stoked about getting to meet some other local authors. I know a couple in the area, but this will be a really good event in Chattanooga, not Nashville, in Chattanooga. So if you are in Chattanooga or around the area, put that in your calendar. I think the public library is releasing information about that this week. So if you follow them on Facebook, I think they have an Instagram as well, but they will be putting up that information later on this week. The last really big event that I have going on is in October in Orlando. I will be at the Romantasy Book Con and Masquerade. It's October 3rd through 5th, and I'm real excited for that one. It's going to be amazing. There are some authors that are going to be there that I have been a stan for a long time. So I'm really excited to go and mingle with some other authors, a lot of whom are self-published. So that'll be a really fun networking event. Book signing, I'll have merch. My order form for that one is on Baventi. That is where we are debuting our special editions of Realm Leaper and Windwalker. So if you are a special edition collector, go check those out. They're kind of blurred right now because we're going to do a big reveal later, and it's going to be really fun. So the last thing, on Kindle Vella right now, I have a work in progress up, and I'm kind of treating it like a beta read. So if you like to comment on stuff, if you like giving feedback or doing beta reads, go check out Kindle Vella. The story is called Oak. It's with some modern urban fantasy mixed into it. There's some mythological retelling in it. It's really fun. It's way different than my other series. The vibe, the whole feeling of it is very different. So it's kind of refreshing to write those characters because they just have, a whole different aura about them. It's been a blast. So if you do Kindle Vella already, then you know how it works. If you don't, honestly, you could just Google Kindle Vella and it'll take you right to it. It's a pretty cool little platform. It does episodic reading, so you get a chapter at a time. I have 12 chapters loaded so far. So go give it a little peek. Leave me some feedback. Leave me some comments. Eventually that story will be turned into a full book, and probably we're going to keep it at 12 chapters on Kindle Vella. So that way we still have some surprises later on. So, yeah. Okay, so today's episode is everything that you need to think about, everything that you should prepare yourself before you start the self-publishing process. So this is like, you have a story in mind. Maybe you are already writing. Maybe you have already started shopping around and looking at self-publishing, considering traditional publishing. You're in that early phase before you have pressed go on anything. And even if you have pressed go on something, it's okay to stop and change your mind. So I want that on the forefront of your thoughts before anything. Also, keep in mind, all of this is from my experience and experience from that I've learned from my peers. It may not apply to you. Your journey is going to be your own journey. And it is okay to hear something and think, I don't think that applies to me. That would make sense because we are living different lives. But I do think a lot of this is going to be relevant to the majority of us who are going through this self-publishing journey. It is, I think, some of the challenges and realizations that the majority of us who are self-publishing have learned the hard way or have maybe not been explicitly told as we began. So first and foremost, the very first thing that I want to get out of the way, if you are looking at publishing either traditionally or self-publishing, this goes for either one. If you are looking at publishing your story with some sort of idea that you are going to financially regain any investment that you have put into it, I need you to do pump the brakes and really evaluate that first. So on average, most print books only sell about 250 copies. Now that data is a little skewed because there's a lot of different types of books that are lumped into that 250 average that kind of skews the data. It kind of messes it up. If we desegregated it more, the number would maybe look a little different. That aside, if we take out the nonfiction, very topic specific academic books and whatnot, we might bring the number up to 500. That's still not a ton. That's the reason why you have a lot of authors who get traditionally published and then can't traditionally publish their next book with the same publishing house, because it's very difficult to get that super marketable, super successful book out into the market. That doesn't mean that it won't be successful, but you do have to really modify your expectations so that it fits the reality that we are in. Entertainment in general has, how many platforms do we have now for entertainment? If we look at TV, movies, reading, print, just with streaming in general, plus we're competing with social media as well. If we're honest, social media is probably our largest competitor as far as gaining consumers, because even us super bookish people have a hard time logging off of our social media platforms and actually sitting down and reading. Hitting that really high number of success financially is going to be challenging. Another thing to think about is most authors who are very successful are successful because they have a large catalog, meaning they have a book series, they have several book series a lot of times, or several standalones where readers have read their work and it's almost like a rabbit hole. It just leads you through the catalog of what they've read, and that makes you a lot more successful. There's a whole bunch of resources that suggest that the magic number to being successful is 10. So 10 books in your catalog before you are really truly financially making back what you have invested. So that takes time. It also takes a lot of creativity. It takes a ton of commitment. And before you start getting your hopes up to, those grand achievements, to those grand ideas of what you think your book is going to do, you need to be very honest with yourself. How much commitment are you willing to give this? Also, how much time do you have to give to this? If you're working full time right now, probably you're not going to have all of the time to give to it, and that's okay. Especially if this is your first, if this is your debut, it is okay if you're not giving it everything yet. Make sure your reality and your expectations are meeting somewhere in the middle, okay? So that is first and foremost. That is the first thing I want every new author to sit down and contemplate. The second thing that you should really get right with is that publishing and self-publishing your book is a business. So that means you do need to set up a business account. You are operating as a business. Now, you could do this as a sole proprietor, and that is very easy to do. You can use your same social security number for that. You don't need a separate EIN, which is like a tax number. But you need to do a little bit of research and make sure that you have set yourself up with a business license. That is also helpful, especially when you're first beginning, because you are able to write off a lot of your expenses, which kind of, softens the blow of what you will financially invest. So that is a little pocket of research that you should be dedicating some time to if you are still looking at self-publishing. If you are traditionally publishing, that will be a little different. Your publishing house is going to walk you through how you are getting your royalties and how that process will work. Number 3, the third thing that you really need to know and really have prepared is grit. You gotta be gritty to make it through self-publishing. Here's the God's honest truth. Things are gonna go wrong. Lots of things are potentially gonna go wrong, and you need to have a backbone strong enough to withstand when things are going wrong, and they're going wrong at the very last minute. When I published my first book, the week before we published, there was an issue with the PDF file. And it had been correct, then it got flagged. All of a sudden, now it's flagged. There was a formatting thing, and in the end, the format was correct, but one of the employees at Ingram Spark flagged it because they saw something irregular. Yes, it was irregular, but it was intentionally done to be part of the product packaging. I can show you. I won't pull it out, but the blurb on the back of my book is 2 separate blurbs, and one of them is upside down. It's supposed to be because they mirror each other. Anyways, it got flagged right before release. So I was on the phone, I was calling, I was trying to get in touch with somebody, and of course it's very difficult to get in touch with anybody on the phone. And it was the day before the last possible second that I could get it approved and the pre-orders still get shipped out on time to go out to the people who had pre-ordered the book. And that was stressful. I didn't have somebody that could just go and do it for me. I had to figure it out on my own. And without having been somebody who had worked in a field that was very used to things going wrong at the last second and having to problem solve that, I don't know that I would have been prepared for that. There's going to be technical malfunctions that happen. You potentially could get to the 9th hour and your computer, I'm going to knock on wood real quick. I'm not even going to finish that sentence. I think you know where I'm going, but I'm a little superstitious. The technical things are going to go wrong. They're going to go on a fritz. And if you don't have the grit and the determination to withstand it, then it's going to be a very, very bumpy journey for you. It's going to be not so enjoyable. So before you start, you need to get your head right and know, okay, if something goes wrong, it's not the end of the world. These are just books after all, right? I know that sounds kind of condescending. They're just books, because most of us who are listening to this or taking part in this have made books kind of like our whole personality. They're our whole world, right? And as an author, like especially, we have made books like a primary part of who we are. But at the end of things, they're just books. We're not curing cancer. I mean, some of us might be, but I'm not. These are, for most of us, for entertainment, right? And even if they are, these academics like groundbreaking books, it's not going to be the end of the world if the printing of it gets moved back 1 week or even a month, right? It will be okay. But if you are not prepared to encounter those problems, then it's going to be a real challenge for you. I didn't number these, and I really should have. Number 4, my 4th tip. If you are self-publishing, you need to expect to invest your own money to the product. And here's the thing, your book is a product. Just like you selling books is a business, your book is a product. It's a creative product, but it is a product that you have to sell, which means that there has to be some sort of monetary investment in it. If you are doing this, if you are self-publishing thinking, oh, I'm not going to spend a dime and I'm just going to sell my books and, I'm going to get rich off of this, I really need you to take several seats and really rethink that. You should be hiring a cover artist, unless you are already an artist and you are already very familiar with graphic design. You should be hiring an editor. Your work needs editing. I don't care how good of a writer you are. You're going to need an editor. The reason why self-publishing sometimes gets a bad rap is because people do have this false idea that they can just create something without any sort of refinement, any sort of reflection, and just have an excellent product. Without an editor, without somebody with second eyes, you're going to miss out on the ultimate potential of your product, which is your story that you're trying to tell. If you don't have somebody else there pushing you, because that's what an editor does, is they're going to push you and challenge you to elevate your product. If you don't have somebody doing that, then you're going to have a subpar product. Here's the other thing. If you think that AI is going to be the solution to spending money and investing in your product, if you think that is going to save you, then you really need to reevaluate your ethics around intellectual property and what kind of market, what kind of audience you're opening yourself up to. The majority of, I would say, the bookish community and the creative community as a whole is pretty anti-AI. Now, AI can be useful. It can be useful in some ways. For example, before I was really educated on AI, I did use a platform to create some portraits of my characters. It was really great for me to have a visual representation that I could look at, so I could write vivid descriptions of my characters and just have a better picture of what was happening in the scenes. Because when I write, I do visualize what's happening and then write what I see. So having those visualizations of my characters was extremely useful. Now, even though I have that, and it was very useful, I don't use it for marketing. I only use it for my own personal creative use that stays within my own little bubble or sphere of consumption. Same with like ChatGPT or any sort of the writing AI tools. They can be useful for ideation. If you need some sort of idea of like what kind of weapons could be used in a heist or something, that could be useful for you to like kind of get some sort of idea, but it needs to stop at developing your ideas and then going from there. So I'm not saying AI can't be used for good in any way, but anytime that you're slapping AI onto a product and claiming it as your own, there is some theft involved in that, because it has the original ideas for that have been skimmed from somewhere. So my biggest advice to you is do not use AI art for your cover photos, and don't use it for editing. It's already been proven so far. AI is a terrible use for like actual writing. It's very stiff and static. And as a former ELA teacher, I can tell you too, it does not make things super enjoyable to read. I got tons of work turned into me all the time that was written by AI, and it was very obvious it was written by AI. It was not hard to prove. And while the information might have been correct, the writing was not elegant. It was not very sophisticated. It was robotic, which kind of makes sense because it was written by a robot. Okay, the next tip I have. So most of us are going to be concerned about market trends when we write. A big one is when you think about the romance genre, we have these tropes that people kind of swoon over, and they get used over and over and over again. But you also have authors who break away from those tropes. Sometimes they're using anti-tropes. Sometimes they're using something completely different, right? They're not doing a retelling. They're not telling a story that resembles anybody else's story. And either way you go, whether your story is very tropey, it's very familiar, or if your story is like cutting edge and completely different and breaking the barriers of what's normal. Either way, it is not abnormal to feel a little insecure about your creativity and whether or not there is a market for what you are writing. And here's what I'm going to tell you. There is a market. Whether you are writing the same old trope over and over and over again, or you are writing something completely different, there is a market for those readers. There's a reason why we love tropes. Tropes are like your favorite cardigan that you put on and you pull it out at the beginning of fall and you're so excited because you finally get to wear it and it's so soft and it's so cozy. That's why we like tropes. It's because it's familiar and it feels good and we know what to expect, right? It's like somebody who has a safe food. You know you can read it. You know you're going to enjoy it. You know what you're getting when you get into it. When we have something that is avant-garde and completely new, There are people who are desperate. There are readers who are just desperate for something new. They are desperate for a breath of fresh air. They don't want that same old cardigan. They want something new. They want a new denim jacket. I don't know. That's an analogy I'm going with today. There is a market for your book no matter which direction you go. Now, that's not an excuse to write anything hateful or harmful. But as far as like whether you are being super tropey, super familiar, or super different, there is a market. Your job is going to be finding your market. And you can use social media for that. You can use advertising. You can use press kits for that. There's a lot of resources for finding your market. You're going to have to put some work in on the front end to find your market, but there's a market for it. So do not be ashamed of what you are writing, because there are people who are waiting for that story. Trust me. Okay, that was a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's important for us to always remember that our stories have a place in this world. Even though most of us are going to be dealing with quite a bit of imposter syndrome, I think it's just a good reminder that just because you are writing the story does not make it any less valuable. All right. Okay, so the last thing, this next one is just, it's one that like, I have to tell myself this all the time. So as I'm talking about it, I just want you to know I am talking to myself as much as I'm talking to anybody else. This process of being an author, of publishing your work, of marketing it, making it a good business, it's a marathon. This is a marathon. It is not a sprint. And the thing about a marathon is you don't just jump up one morning and run a marathon. There's a lot of training that goes involved. There's months, years of training and building yourself up to get to that point before you successfully run a marathon. So if your first book is not an overnight success, who's going to be surprised by that, right? Because who just wakes up and their first marathon they run, they win it? See, I would really love to know who has done that. Nobody. Your first book, your first few books are probably going to be experiments, right? You're going to be figuring out what is working, what is not working, what is my writing style, what is my marketing style, how much time do I have to devote to this, what kind of artwork do I like, what kind of editor do I like to work with, do I like street teams, do I like working with marketing teams? You're going to be figuring out your own personal style of this and what works the best for your storytelling and your publishing style. You're also going to be figuring out who your market is, and it takes a while to build an audience. Just like in social media, just like in, a singer doesn't just immediately have a massive following. They have to build it up. So it's going to take some time. It's not going to happen overnight, and you're going to have to put in the work on the front end in order to get to that point where you feel like it is a success. But I can tell you this right now, publishing one book is a success. No matter what happens, your story is now out there, it's into the world, people have access to it. That's a success. That's a win. Every step along the way, it's going to be a bunch of wins added up all together before you get to that marathon. So keep pushing. It's okay to feel discouraged, but you want to keep going because the end result is that marathon at the end. All right, last thing, the very last thing that I have for today. This is the thing that is going to get you through all of it. The thing that you really need to do, probably at the very beginning. Get a circle. Build a circle around you that's going to help you through the hard times. Get you a circle of friends who have no real investment in the project. right? But they're just there to root you on. Build yourself a support circle that you can call and say, hey, I had this thought. Can you run this through with me? Or who are just excited to hear about your progress. People who are excited to hear you talk about your projects. People who are excited for you when something goes well. And somebody who's going to pat you on the back and say, it's okay, you got this when things don't go well. Get yourself an excellent editor. An editor, truthfully, I think the editor can make or break the project. If you don't have a solid editor, it's going to be so hard to get that final product to the place where you really want it to be. And with that, also look for a mentor or a coach, somebody who has been through this before, somebody who already knows the process. That's going to help you so much. If you have a buddy or somebody that you can just call or message and say, hey, what was that software that you told me about? Or, how do I format this for KDP? Or how do I write a press kit? Somebody who really knows the experience that you are currently going through and can empathize on a very personal level, that's going to be so helpful for you, on top of having that supportive circle of friends or family who's rooting you on the sidelines. So that is probably where I would start. If you are at the beginning of your self-publishing journey, start with this circle. Start with finding a coach. Start with finding a mentor, somebody that is going to hold your hand and help you through the whole process. Okay, so that was an excellent episode. I really enjoyed it. I would love to know where you are in the process of self-publishing. Have you already self-published? Are you just starting it? Are you just thinking about it? Have you been writing for a really long time and are just now getting to the point where you are considering publishing? Where are you on this journey? I myself am not super far into my journey. I'm only a couple of years in. And so there are some people out there who have way more experience than I do. And I would love to know, where are you in your journey? So thank you so much for joining me for Write It Up. This has been an awesome episode and I really enjoyed chatting. So I'll see you guys for the next episode coming soon.